Abarigani, Otep, Alafia, and greetings to all of you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Adiyemi Mandeli, and I have the pleasure of being your moderator for this incredible event this evening. The International African Arts Festival, in conjunction with the New York chapter of the National Association of Kawida Organizations, NACO, and the Black Solidarity Day Committee, are pleased to present this evening's dialogue with none other than MAULANA KARENGA. Our topic is voting for your own vision, not just a question of candidates. Obviously, an extremely important topic for this evening. I want to jump right into it, but first, let me just, for those of you who don't know Dr. Karenga, just his biography, very short biography. Professor and Chair of Africana Studies at California State University, Long Beach, the Executive Director of the African American Cultural Center, US, and Chair of Organization US and National Association of Kawaida Organizations. And most of all, as many of you probably are aware, he is the creator of Kwanzaa, the Nguzo Saba, and Kawaida. He is also the author of Introduction to Black Studies, Ma'at, the Moral Ideal in Ancient Egypt, and Odu Ifa, the Ethical Teaching. Dr. Karenga, welcome, welcome, welcome. Unfortunately, I think Dr. Karenga is on mute still. Dr. Karenga, you may have to come off mute.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Adiyemi. Thank you very much for the honor and the welcome. And I'd like to say about Ghani to all the audience and say to him, Kwanyabia and Jumuiya yetu, yani tunasema karibuni mmekuja jamaa yenu na mahali pa amani, na tunawatakia baraka bila idadi na vitu vyote vizuri bila mwisho. And that says that welcome, you found your family in a peaceful place. We wish for you blessings without number and all good things without end. And we bear witness as an African people, the organization, us and all, that as our beginning was great and good, so shall our development throughout eternity be, if we dare struggle, speak truth, do justice, and walk in the way of rightness. Hotel, Ashe, Hede. So welcome to this lecture. I'm glad to share with you. And I'd like to say at the very beginning, thanks very much to Santisana, to the 50th Annual International African Arts Festival, in conjunction with the New York chapter of the National Association of Kawaida Organizations, NACO, and the Black Solidarity Day Committee, and especially to Dr. Segun Shabaka for this invitation to come and share with you on the topic, voting for our own vision, not just a question of candidates. In the midst of this pandemic of COVID-19 and the ongoing pathology of racist oppression and lying imposed from high and low places as a way of life, the sacred charge to us by our honored foremother, Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, whose birthday is October the 6th this month. Her challenge to us and her sacred charge to us to constantly question and radically transform America is both urgent and an enduringly relevant proposition. She taught that justice and freedom required truth. And if, quote, she says, if we want America to be a free society, then we must stop lying. And we must also stop people's lying from going unchallenged. Where we see it, we must remove it, because where the broom and the vacuum cleaner don't reach, the dust and dirt certainly remains. And so we have to stand up and speak truth to the people and speak truth to power. We speak the truth to power to expose and criticize and condemn its evil, injustice, and oppression. And we speak truth to the people so that they, as Ms. Hamer taught us, realize that power is the people, an aware and united people, thinking and actively willing the freedom they want and deserve, teaching them to become socially and self-consciously understanding of their own life and liberation. They become so self-conscious agents of their own life and liberation, right? So we have to teach them the power within them, right? They must realize, as the ancient Egyptians taught, that it is wrong to walk upside down in darkness. And therefore, I will come forth today and bring forth the truth which is within me, for surely it is within me, right? So Miss Fannie Lou Hamer talks to us today from across the years and telling us to think deeply, to constantly question America, to question ourselves, and to bring forth from within us our vision of human possibility. For as we say in Kawaida, this is our duty, to know our past and honor it, to engage our present and improve it, and to imagine a whole new future and to forge it in the most ethical, effective, and expansive way. And so Mrs. Hamer called to question America in thought and practice is an ancient call made at the dawn of moral conscience of humankind itself. It is this ancient African ethical imperative that calls us to, quote, bear witness to truth and to set the scales of justice in their proper place among those who have no voice. So Mrs. Fannie Lou Hamer, is a model and mirror for us in our striving to be ourselves and to free ourselves. When we say be ourselves, we mean to be ourselves without penalty, punishment, or unjust and vicious restriction and restraint, and struggle mightily to come into the fullness of ourselves. And we strive and struggle to free ourselves so that we can live a good life, a meaningful life, a productive life, and again flourish and come into the fullness of ourselves. Mrs. Hamer emerged as a leader and guiding light in the Black freedom movement, especially during the civil rights phase of that Black freedom movement. A lot of times people try to collapse the Black freedom movement and transform it into just a civil rights movement, but that undermines the whole idea of freedom. It leaves out Black power, which is the second phase, because the Black freedom movement is 55 to 65, the civil rights phase, and 65 to 75, the Black power phase. But the most important thing about it is that it's about freedom. And that's what Miss Hamer talked about, freedom and justice and equality and power over our destiny and daily life. And freedom is a larger concept than civil rights. Freedom is what Malcolm said is essential, because until we have freedom, we can't even talk about justice and equality, right? It's all problematic in an unfree situation. So freedom is the first right after the life. The right to life is first, of course, but to be free in our life, to choose, to conceive of the world, our world in our own image and interest, and to realize it, as well as to realize ourselves. That is what we're about. So we dare to free ourselves, right? And be ourselves. Because if we don't be ourselves, we can't free ourselves. And we don't free ourselves, we can't fully be ourselves. So we got to always see that interaction, interrelationship between being ourselves, Black people, African people, and freeing ourselves. Mrs. Hamer emerged, I repeat again, as a leader and guiding light in the Black freedom movement, especially in our people's collective struggle for voting rights. It was a right that was constitutionally granted to us with the 15th Amendment, but we have had to fight to exercise and secure that right ever since. She walks off the plantation to work and struggle with others, not simply to vote, but to use the vote as a way to educate, as a way to uplift, and as a way to gain power. She told our people, not only is the people is power, and power is the people, but she said, quote, we have to build our power. We have to win every office we can. And we'll talk about why that's important, right, in a minute. So now we are coming to a critical election this November the 3rd. And Mrs. Hamer calls for us to be aware and active and engaged. For there is no substitute, Black people, no substitute for an aware, organized, and engaged people, constantly involved in a multiplicity of activities to define, defend, and advance their interests. No substitute for that, right? And so we must vote, she would tell us, for it is actually and undeniably, in any sane sense or serious sense, it is actually a matter of life and death for us, other people, and for the planet itself. And we must vote not for a candidate, but rather, one, for our own vision, and two, what result we see as the most promising context to pursue and realize our vision after the election. So first for the vision itself, and then for the best context for us to pursue that vision after the election. With this in mind, we must vote for several reasons. Number one, we must vote first because it is for us a hard-won right and responsibility to vote, to raise our voice, right? To speak our own special cultural truth, and to make our own unique contribution to how the society is governed, how it is reconceived, and how it is reconstructed. We must have a voice in every decision that affects our destiny and daily lives. Ms. Hamer tells us then to speak up, to speak out, to speak loud, to speak freedom, to speak justice. She says, quote, if you don't speak out, nobody is going to speak out for you. We are our own liberators, a people that cannot save itself is lost forever, we always say. And that no matter how numerous or sincere your allies are, those who would be free must strike the first, the final, and decisive blow. We have a right to vote, a right of freedom of speech and expression, and voting is an important way to express our choice, to say yay, to say hey, to say nay, right? As she said, to also to oppose what is wrong and unjust, and to support what is right and just. So secondly, we must vote also because for us as a people, it is a legacy. Listen now, it is a legacy. And it is a legacy born of service, sacrifice, and righteous and relentless struggle. It is a legacy gifted to us through the risk and actual loss of lives and livelihood, the loss of health and homes, and whole communities wiped out because Black people decided they would express themselves. They would control their destiny and daily life at the risk and cost of their own life. And there's a loss not only of all these things, but a loss of security and the denial of sanctuary and justice under the law. They kill us under the camouflage and color of law. And yet we will not be silenced and sidelined. We dare to struggle and declare space not only for ourselves, but in honor of those who walked and worked and struggled and sacrificed before us, as well as those who will come after us. And certainly always to improve our lives in the present. Mrs. Hamer told us that the real story of the murderous and mutilating history of our oppression reveals that, quote, listen now, every red stripe in that flag represents Black people's blood that has been shed. Think about that. You got to question America. What is that red in your life? Not what they intended it to be, but what does it represent to you? And it represents their blood shed, right? It's the same in our international flag that the Honorable Marcus Garvey gave us. Red is for the blood that we shed, he said. In the advancement of our interests, in the securing of our liberation and higher levels of human life. It is why Mrs. Hamer said she could not stand and sing the hypocritical word of the official national anthem. What you see on television, what the athletes did, she was already doing, right? We were doing that in the 60s, right? This is a recap of it, and it's a good thing to borrow from and build on the history that we have, not erase our memory and suffer from historical amnesia, wandering around, wondering who we are and looking for sanctuary in Sweden. We must not do that. She says the land, she says, I couldn't sing the hypocritical word of the national anthem. For she said to black people, quote, the land of the free and the home of the brave means the land of the tree and the home of the grave in Mississippi. So she said, what do we have to say? Oh, say, can you see? And what do we have to hail? Why are we saying that, right? We got a different experience than white people. White people dominate, deprive, and degrade. That's what oppression is. That's what racial oppression is, right? Domination, deprivation, and degradation. Not just controlling you, wanting to deprive you. Not only food, clothing, and shelter, but your life itself in a terrorizing, repulsively regular way. And then to degrade, to declare you less than who you are, and to treat you accordingly. And so she said that when she thinks of the land of the free and the home of the brave, it means to her the land of the tree and the home of the grave in Mississippi. And Malcolm said, when they say Mississippi, don't think you're escaping because you're in New York. He says, no Mason-Dixon line. The South and the North are in cahoots, right? One kills you one way, the other kills you another way. Might be lynched in the South, but you're shot down in the street by the police. And so even today, with police violence and killing of black men and women and children with reckless and depraved disregard, I said reckless and depraved disregard for black life and right. And how then do we praise a country that oppresses us with such pathological persistence and perversity? How do we do that, right? That takes strength, right? And it also means blocking out what happened to your ancestors to praise it. That's why Malcolm said, I'm no flag saluter, right? I'm not talking as a beneficiary of America. I'm talking about a victim of American democracy, which is nothing but disguised hypocrisy. Excuse me if I'm wrong. You don't have to watch a Trump video or see or read a Trump tweet to know this is real, right? Trump is just the monster side of America, unadorned and unhidden, straight out in your face. That's them growling when they first hit the land here. Native Americans met him before we did, right? Rescue me if I'm wrong. Did I miss something here, right? And they've been doing this and justifying it for a lot of reasons. So we have to resist. In the context of resistance, we say there is no, in the context of oppression, there is no remedy except resistance. And so here we are. We must continue to wage the struggle. We must, she tells us, continue to question America and to dare to radically reconceive and reconstruct the society. Thirdly, we must dare to vote. And we must vote because this is a critical and contested space for policy and resources. Did you hear? This is critical space for policy and resources. They're making laws that determine our lives. They're stealing money that we paid taxes for. We created the wealth that they're bragging about, and yet we don't have access to it. But we have the right to all public wealth and space. A right, did you hear what I said? A right to all public wealth and space, right? And so we got to fight for it, though. They're not going to, that little check they sent, that's a result of struggle. But if we don't struggle even more, we won't get that. All right? And then they do it with such nasty attitudes, like they're giving us something when in fact they got the corporations on welfare and pretending we are. No, it's the corporations that got all the money. You understand what I mean? They made more money during Trump regime than they had ever before. This is critical space we're fighting for, Black people, and we can't give it up by giving some, oh, it's a less of evil. It's not less evil. That's not even an issue. Take that off the table. The issue is, what is your vision? And what is the context most conducive to the struggle you're going to wage after the election? You can tell how important and how critical this space is by how many devious and dirty tricks. How many devious efforts and dirty tricks that the oppressor uses to negate our vote. Gerrymandering, right? Disqualifying our votes, just throwing them out when they come in. Discouraging our voting by sending police and vigilantes to be present at the poll and to threaten us. And then the robocalls that give us misinformation. And what about reducing access to mail-in and in-person voting? Just taking up mailboxes in the street. Can you imagine? I mean, this is a cold cave, yeah, right? This is not like accidental, right? This is cold. This is so cold, make a polar bear shiver. You understand? This is cold. And stopping the post office from functioning. Taking the mail sorting machines out or damaging them or shutting them down. If voting is not important and you're not important, why do they spend so much time discouraging you and giving you conversations to say each year, each 4 years, each 1 year, each midterm? Nothing in it for me. Oh, yeah, there's something in it for you. And guess what? They've convinced you not to get your share because guess what? That means more for them. Power and wealth. It's all about that. You know that. It's not about hugging and saving the soul of America. I like that. I like the brothers and sisters that talk like that, right? But I think it's saving the people, right? We got to save the people, right? When we save the people, we can save the soul of America, whatever that is. We got to define that. Rescue me if I'm wrong. Has anybody ever told you what the soul of America is, what it would look like? Oh, hey, please. Let's be honest. We got to save the people, living and breathing and dying and sick people. We've got to save them. If we save them, we save America. We don't save them, we can't save America. What we're doing is saving a racialized capitalism, an imperial conception of white rule and white supremacy. That's what we're saving. Rescue me if I'm wrong. It's too late now to pretend we have to drop a book on your head for you to understand, right? We can't do that. We got to just go on and accept the fact that it's on us. We say in us, if not this, then what? And if we don't do it, who will? I repeat, if not this, that struggle, working together. And Guzo Saba, right? Umoja, unity. Kujichagulia, self-determination. Ujima, collective work and responsibility. Ujamaa, cooperative economics. Nia, purpose, Kuma, creativity, and Imani, faith. If not this, then what? And if we don't do it, who will? We're a moral vanguard whose struggles have redefined the content, character, and course of this country. And all over the world, people borrow our moral vocabulary and our moral vision and pose our struggle as a model to emulate. So we can't be unaware of that and the awesome legacy our ancestors have left us in love, work, service, and struggle. And so at this critical juncture of history, as Ms. Heyman said, of one of the critical elections she engaged in, she said, looking at it, quote, "There is nothing symbolic about this election. We're fighting for our very lives." I repeat, this is Ms. Heyman in the 60s. There is nothing symbolic about this election. We are actually fighting for our lives. Unquote. The issues at stake are many, Black people. Let's start with food security. How many people eat well? Eat nutrition. And she was talking about food security in terms of real serious food, not only having access to food, but having access to quality food. She said, just because people fat don't mean they're well fed, right? Because most of the time when they fight, fat, it's because they were eating unnourishing food. You know what I'm saying? What they call this stuff? Quick food. You know, that kind of fast food. I signed to Tim. Fast food, they be eating fast food, right? And it gives you fast weight, right? So we have to be honest about this. Everybody fat ain't well fed, right? Let's face it, right? So food security, this is Ms. Hamer said that, right? Food security, clean water. I mean, have we forgotten Flint? Have we forgotten all the people who don't have clean water in the so-called great country of the world? Not in a place where they done poison it with their uranium aftermath bombs, right? not a place where we still digging wells or anything. We're down here where people turn on faucets. But guess what? Out of our faucets comes death, right? Dirty water, lead-filled water to destroy the future in the minds of our young people, right? To save money. That's the coldness and callousness of capitalism. Call it what you want. You don't want to call it capitalism, good, but you know it's a system of raw and racist oppression, allowing for no mercy, right? So the issues are at stake of food security, clean water, health care. They're trying to take away health care, right? I mean, what's going on? It's enough money for everybody to have a good life, but we got a bad system. Let's face it. And we're not going to transform it overnight. So you know what Cabral said, you know, and we said first we introduced Cabral by saying the struggle is a long and difficult one. And therefore Cabral says what? Mask no difficulty, tell no lies, and claim no easy victory. The struggle is a protracted one. We should talk like that in the 60s when people lost their vocabulary and the vision. That's why I said vote your vision. Get your vision back. You walk unaware without a vision. You walk without a map, without a vision. You walk without a purpose, without a vision. And you walk without an identity if you don't have a vision that reminds you of who you are as a moral and social vanguard. Identity, purpose, and direction are always linked. We are an African people. We have historically been a moral and social vanguard. We stood up first and spoke the first human truth. You've heard me say this before. We taught Jew and Gentile, Hittite, Hyksos, Roman, Greek, Persian. They all came to study in the Nile Valley. Egypt was called the light of the world, the womb of the world, right? And the temple of the world. It was the light of the world because of its knowledge, the womb of the world because of all the beautiful things it created and produced. And it was the temple of the world because of its deep spiritual and ethical contribution to the moral and spiritual heritage of humankind. And that's our heritage, right? And we always take care of the poor and the vulnerable among us. That's the measure of our morality. So healthcare is serious, housing, employment, adequate income. People need to know they're not going to die. And they're going to have monies for themselves just to live, right? They need education, quality education. We need to restrain the police violence and reconceive public safety. How else can we do public safety without the police coming in and shooting us? We don't need that, right? But we don't stop. If we don't stop and think about it, we don't develop and craft a vision that requires us to question America, as Ms. Amos said, we're missing. Look at immigration, fair taxation, poverty reduction, a just and sensible international policy, halting environmental degradation, and securing the health and well-being of humanity and the whole planet. That's how we think at our best, right? That's how we think at our best, Black people. That's how we roll, and we got to continue to go forward with that understanding of ourselves. Fourthly, we must vote because we must not collaborate in our own oppression. If you sit home, if you stay quiet, you've allowed them to silence and sideline you. To remain silent is to consent. To consent is to approve and facilitate not only our own oppression, but also to approve and facilitate evil, injustice, and unfreedom and oppression that this regime represents and imposes, not just in this country, but around the world. Can we be complicit in that? We, the moral and social vanguard, a moral and social vanguard of the country, can we actually in good faith assume a role of silence and have something as flimsy to say as is choosing too good evil? That's because you're focusing on them, right? What about focusing on yourself? What about focusing on your people? What about focusing on the planet? What about focusing on the whole of humanity? Right? Let's think. In Swahili, we have two words for human beings. One is watu, just straight out human being, and the other is walimwengu, which means world being. We're not just, human beings, we're world beings, and we got to think like that, right? We got human identities, but we also got natural identities. We got, by the way, we got divine identities, right? This was taught in ancient Egypt. The Messenger Muhammad reminded us to sacralize and divinize ourselves, to remember that there's a spark of divine within us, and we must honor that. And that's what is called dignity, that inherent worthiness, right? That is in us when we're born, that people can't give to us, can't take away from us, that is transcendent of all social and biological categories like race and class and gender and sexuality and age and ability, right? And religion, right? Second, it's equal in all people. This is our concept. We introduced that to the world. And finally, it's inalienable. It can't be taken away from you, and you can't give it away. That's what dignity in ancient Egyptian called shepesu, the inherent worthiness of a person that's divinely endowed. That's us. And we taught the world that. We don't come into the world as junior brothers. We come as ancestors. We come as ancient ones, as elders. We're the elders of humanity, not the junior brothers and sisters. Rescue me if I'm wrong. There's no need of referring to it if we don't live it, right? We got to make our lives and our history not a reference, but a resource, drawing from the best of what it means to be African and human, using that to enrich and ground our lives and direct our lives toward good and expansive end. I said that we cannot be silent in such a society as we have, this oppressive society. People are either complicit as enablers and active supporters, or as those who give consent by silence and action, or they are self-consciously committed to righteous resistance against all forms of oppression. There is no neutrality in America. There is no neutrality in a context of oppression. There is no safe place from oppression. For as Minister Malcolm taught, the battle line for us is everywhere. Before Malcolm said, though, Paul Robeson said, the battlefront is everywhere. There is no sheltered rear. Later, Malcolm would come and say, wherever Black people are, is a battle line. That whether you're in the East or the West or North or the South, you and I are in a country that is a battle line for all of us. We are, he said, living in a war zone. And they are making war on us, whether we want to be at war or not. And so we got to get ready, Black people. And we've got to struggle, and we've got to struggle everywhere we can. And that means what Ms. Heyman said. We must fight, quote, fight every step of the way, end quote, to freedom and justice. And therefore, if the battlefield is everywhere, if the battle line is everywhere, guess what? The fifth and final reason we must vote is that voting is a battlefront. Voting is a battle line. In the struggle for our lives, voting is a battle line. And so we struggle so that we and all human beings can live lives of dignity and decency. Ms. Heyman tells us, quote, we can't wait for things to change, but have to stand up and be men and women. Now, usually you say stand up and be a man, but she says stand up and be a woman too. See, I like that, because she's a womanist. She's not a feminist, she's a womanist. And she teaches that Black men and women must respect each other. They must accept and practice in daily life their equality, their complementarity, and their unity in life, love, work, and struggle. And they don't even have to be intimately engaged, but they got to respect each other as men and women, right? They got to see that liberation is a collective project and principle. that freedom is indivisible, justice indivisible, all great good is invisible. In fact, Oduifa says all good comes from the time of creation, they said, the ancestors said. In Oduifa, from the time of creation, all good comes, all great good, all good comes from gathering together in harmony with a beautiful purpose, with a beautiful identity, purpose, and direction, right? So Ms. Heyman tells us we can't wait for things to change. We have to stand up and be men and women. Prayer, she says, and I say this because we got a lot of people that want to pray instead of practice. And we and us say that at critical junction, practice is the best prayer. But she says, and I'm paraphrasing here, prayer can be a practice, prayer can be a prelude to practice, but never substitute. For, and I quote her here, quote, you can pray until you faint, but unless you get up and try to do something, God is not going to put it in your lap, unquote. We must then, she repeatedly argued, build our own power, build our own community, build our own future. For she says, it is not a question of what our oppressor will give us or willingly yield to us. It's a question, rather, of what we ourselves will gain and win and take in struggle. We have to take our struggle, right? A. Philip Randolph said, freedom is not given, it's won. Justice is not conceded, it's extracted. And it's extracted and won in righteous and relentless struggle, we say in our organization, us. Ms. Heyman also calls for the end of warmongering and war making. She condemns with Minister Malcolm and Reverend Martin Luther King the carnage in Vietnam. She condemns the cost in human lives and the diversion of human, material, and financial resources to an unjust and vicious war against the Vietnamese people and their right to self-determination. And she calls for an alliance of all peoples, Africans, Native Americans, Latinos, Asians, and progressive Europeans to join in winning and building a good and just society and a good and sustainable world. Ending imperial wars, she said, she hoped would give us, all of us, an opportunity to turn inward and, quote, to stand and fight together for things that are rightly deserved right here in the U.S., to make democracy a reality for all the people of the world, regardless of race and color. What a noble vision. What a noble vision to end on, right? What a noble vision to start with. Listen now, standing and fighting together for things that are rightly deserved. That's called justice. Justice is what is due, right? Rightly deserved. That's justice, right? We're fighting for justice. We're fighting for freedom. That's deserved. Right here in the United States, not overseas, not getting involved in everybody's life but your own, hyped up on steroids and pretending you're clear and ready to fly. Hey, we've seen people on dope before. What does this man think? What does he talk about? Running up there, doing a little Mussolini pose on the balcony. Il Duce. You know what I mean? He need to quit that. But you know, white people in the head of him, right? He's a monster side. Mitch McConnell finally said he doesn't go to the White House because they don't approach security, right? They don't approach health. Yeah, hey. But he's going to let everybody else get COVID-19. We can't even get no money for the people, right? They're losing their houses. They're losing, the moratorium on rent is ending, right? They're losing their cars. And the guys sitting in there, I don't know what they're doing, but it ain't right. You know, this is like the gathering of wolves, right? Howling and carrying on about something that's not real. At least the wolves got a purpose for howling. I'm trying to figure out what theirs is. But we know their visions. So Ms. Heyman said we'll do it right here in the country, right? And make democracy a reality In the 60s, we used to say, people talk about make the world safe for democracy. We got to make democracy safe for the world, we used to say, right? Because the democracy they have is a Herrenvolk democracy. Herrenvolk means master race. It's a German term. It's a German. And Malcolm said that. But it's just a Herrenvolk and a hypocritical expression of democracy. Herrenvolk means the ruling race rules, not the people. It's of the ruling race. And the law is nothing but their right, raised to the level of sacred observance at the point of a gun. They got a gun to our head. Let's face it, right? That's why we stop and come to court when they summon us, even though they don't have the right. And what a moral obscene thing for an oppressor to summon the oppressed to court. Is that a joke or what? But they got the gun, right? And so we go along until we can disarm them. Who are they to make political prisoners out of us? Who are they to charge us with anything? Oh, I've gone over time. Timber just made me know I was on a roll. So let me close out by saying she wanted us as Black men and women to, quote, work side by side to bring liberation to ourselves and all people, unquote. And Ms. Hamer leaves us with a special message, she said. She said to us as Black men and women, I leave you a special message. And that is to continue the struggle, not mislead the people, to accept, never to accept second-class citizens or forget the many who have given their lives to end this evil of savage and sustained oppression. And so I close as I began. This is our duty to know our past and honor it, to engage our present and improve it, and to imagine a whole new future and to forge it in the most ethical, effective, and expansive ways. And this too, Black people, continue to struggle, keep the faith, hold the line, love and respect our people and each other, seek and speak truth, do and demand justice, be constantly concerned with the well-being of the world and all in it, and dare help rebuild the overarching movement, which prefigures and makes possible the good world we all want and deserve to live in and leave as a legacy worthy of the name and history African. Hotep, Ashe, Hedi.
Dr. Karenga, thank you. Asante Sana so very much. Let me tell those of you who are listening and watching that you can submit some questions to Dr. Karenga. Go to YouTube or Facebook. I suspect you're on either one of those. Send us your questions. We do have a few minutes left, so we can take some questions. But let me jump in because there's a couple that we have so far. Dr. Karenga,
yes.
What do you envision as the ideal political formation or situation Black people in the U.S. should strive for to maximize and leverage their political strength, and why?
Right. Appreciate what you said, if I understand correctly. First of all, and we're coming to the Million Man March, Day of Absence, 25-year history. And one of the things I mentioned there in the mission statement, which is a public policy document, we have to rebuild the movement, right? And when I talk about the movement, I mean an overarching movement. This is not to in any way diminish the awesome impact that BLM has had, Black Liberation, the Black Lives Matter movement. But there are other movements, the Kawida movement, the reparations movement, the abolition movement, right? Prisoners' rights movement, the anti-poverty movement, the More Monday movement. There are so many other movements. And the question is, how do we coordinate and create synergy with these movements, have them talk to each other, right? Have them plan, because you need at least 5 fundamental things to consolidate the movement and direct your attention. And I'm basing this on a 55-year history. This is our 55th anniversary of the organization. And people used to think we were going to disappear and the other people were going to be here, but we're here, right? And we've done it because we understand the movement of history, right? We understand it. We listen to the ancestors, right? We build on the best of what it means to be African and human and use that to ground our lives, orient our lives, and direct our lives toward good and expansive end. So let me just real quickly. First, you need an ideology, shared principles, right? We said in the Million Man March mission statement that it begins with Nguzo Saba, but we can have overarching principles, freedom and justice etc. Right? We have to do it. Then we need structure. We need structures to meet regularly, right? To share information, to strengthen each other, right? People got a lot of information they can't use, but we could use. We got some information we can't get to them because we don't have the means, right? We have to have some kind of central structure to meet regularly and talk. Then we need programmatic development. We need program, right? So ideology, we need structure, we need program, right? What are the most important things now? One of the things on the top now, we got to do voting. We got to do that together. All of us have got to turn our attention. See, if we got a movement, we know right well. That's what we got to do. And we have a clearinghouse. We go in and we talk. We do strategies. We share knowledge. Black people got a wealth of knowledge, and we got to share. We got to share with young and old. We got to have intergenerational. White people be talking to you about don't listen to the old people and all that. Hey, they have you going on stage crying for white people, right? White people that die, you don't even know them, but white people start crying, you cry. The same thing with their leaders. They honor their leaders, take them on stage. They can't even walk. They be in wheelchairs, and we clap for them. Then we can't honor an older Black person. Yeah, so what's happening there? Everybody's not doing this. I'm not saying all Black people do this. I'm saying that those people who think like that ought to get that out of their head. And we need intergenerational cooperation and struggle, right? We all have something to contribute to Odu Ifa said. What the young people can't do, we can do. What we can't do, they can do, right? And some of us can do the same thing at the same time, right? So we need that. And then we need communication, right? We got to do more with the internet. The internet, a lot of times with a lot of people, because we're American by habit and African by choice, right? A lot of times we be doing American things and we don't watch ourselves, right? You got to choose to be African. You got to struggle to be African. You can be American without even thinking, right? They got a ditty for you when you get up in the morning and when you lay down at night, right? But so a lot of times people use the internet like Americans, vulgarly self-referential, showing everything they got and then making up some things, right? So we need to back off of that, and we have to ask ourselves, how can we increase this instrument for political liberation, for liberation of the mind and the heart and the body, right? And the spirit. How can we use this technology to do it? We're doing it already some, right? So, I don't think in extremes like that. I'm just saying, can we do more? That's what I'm asking. I give credit for everybody that's doing something. Everybody, right? I wish they knew all their names. I wish we had a single directory, a registry where we can go and find out who is doing what, and so we can find common cause with them, right? A lot of times we look to people overseas and get information from them easier than we can get information for ourselves. And I think we need to work on that. But guess what? I want to go again and say, we're doing beautiful things. Let's keep the struggle going. And so I said ideology, I said structure, I said program, I got communication. We need to build alternative information. We can't give up print. We can't give up developing our own TV. We can't give up doing radio. We got to use it all. And then finally, resources, money, material, skilled personnel, but ultimately the masses. We've got to organize. We need to build organizing schools like we had in the 60s. I've been talking this since the 60s. And then, the churches and all the other people stopped using money for organizing. We got too strong and they didn't like what we were doing, right? And then people went away from their own neighborhood, right? Rescue me if I'm wrong, right? And they did a brain drain. And so what we got to do is reestablish that. So again, ideology, structure, program, communication, and guess what? Resources. And the ultimate resource is an aware, organized, and engaged people, constantly involved in a multiplicity of activities to define, defend, and advance their interests. I know that was long.
Thank you for that. Let me ask you a two-part question here. One, I want to go back to the point you raised about how do we consolidate. So I'm going to raise that question with you. What is your vision around the process for this consolidation of all of those different parties that you identified? And the second part of this is a question that came from Bernadette, who asked, how do we get young people involved?
Well, present what we said, if I understand correctly, We've got to go to them like anybody else. Don't cater to them. Don't talk down to them. Talk to them where they are. Increment. Go to the people. Start with where they are. Build on what they have. Love the people. Cherish the people. Have them to recognize the internal capacity they have to create progress, to free themselves and to be themselves and build the good communities, families, and society and world they want and deserve to live in. But that's how we do it. It's not a mystery. Talk to them. We tell them negative things. We tell them negative things. We tell them American things. Why can't we tell them African things? It's not a mystery. Speak truth. Do justice. Be kind. Do not do evil. The Odu Ifa says. That's just basic. If we could tell the truth just some of the time, right? Couldn't we change life? If we could just be kind. If we could just talk to people on a regular basis without getting angry and without, like talking to them like they're strangers, right? And then if they make a mistake, don't just jump on them and like, hey, you ain't never made a mistake, right? We got to stand up, right? We got to act justly. We got to relate rightly. And we got to walk gently on the earth. That's what we've got to do. Act justly. And that's always a caring, right? Relate rightfully. Caring again. And walk gently. That's caring again. We got to care. We got to care for each other, right? And we got to reach out. And we got to build. We got to belong to organization. We see, sometimes things are right in front of us. The older we find said, often what we're looking for is right in front of us. Only our lack of knowledge that prevents us from seeing, right? And sometimes our lack of looking rightfully that keeps us from seeing. So it's right there. We do it with our churches. We do it with our mosques. We do it with our temples. Why can't we do it with each other? Outside them structures and in those structures. Use it all. Ask more from your church. Ask more from your mosque. Ask more from your temple. Right? Ask them all. Let's get busy. Let's get involved. Let's reach out to each other. Let's rebuild this movement, right? And also another thing, let's take operations like this voting. That helps unite us. Get a collective project. The census, we got to be counted. If we aren't counted, we don't count. And that's how they distribute money, right? And representation. Again, we're back to that, right? So we've got to take ourselves seriously and stop finding a reason not to act. And sometimes in fundamentalists, whether it's in nationalism or religion, they'll just make a million reasons why we shouldn't do something. No, do something. Think of something pretty and beautiful to say and do with each other. That's the beginning of it. That's the beginning of it.
Dr. Karenga, thank you for that. The issue of, and you've heard this before, and it's been out there ever since we dealt with voting. We are caught up with the lesser of two evils. How do you respond to that kind of comment from folks who have reservations about voting?
Well, that's my whole lecture. My whole lecture was that. The title says what to do with that. We vote our own vision, not the candidates, right? Why do we vote for the candidate? The candidates are only relevant in terms of how they represent and promise to do our vision, right? Otherwise, who cares about them, right? We got, look, politicians, right? They say what they need to say, right? We got to hold them responsible, but we have to vote, right? And it's not a question of two evils. It's a question of two things. I told you two things. One, what is our vision? And who is saying something even close to it? Second, what kind of context will result in our voting that helps us to pursue our vision? Because the struggle is a long and difficult one.
Do you see that?
It's so difficult to tell no lies and claim no easy victory, Cabral said.
Then do you see, or what do you see as the vehicle by which we transmit our vision to these elected officials?
Well, we got to get involved, right? We got to get involved. We got to work in the campaign. We got to give money where we can. A lot of times we don't get the money. So people buy our politicians. They rent them, right? And when we don't have money, we can have bodies. We can have minds. We can have hands, right? We can have ideas about how things should go. We got to get involved, right? Again, it's not as difficult as it seems. You just got to want to do it. It's like going to a concert that you want to go to or a movie you want to go to, you know? But we got to get away from the Wakanda mentality that imagine that, you know, something's going to happen that we don't build. In the final analysis, we must build the world we want and deserve to live in. Ujima, collective working responsibility. That's what we've got to do. Yeah, and also I'm going back to what you said about the evil. Remember I told you we got real reasons to vote, right? We got, in addition to the whole idea of realizing our vision, there's a whole right and responsibility. There's a whole question of legacy. There's a whole question of not collaborating in your own oppression. There's a whole question of pursuing policy and resources. And there's a whole question of using this as another battlefield to educate the people, to education, mobilization, organization, and confrontation. That's what leads to transformation. And this becomes a way to do that. We got to fight everywhere. Honorable Fannie Heyman said, we've got to fight every step of the way. There is no easy walk or way to freedom.
Do you, Dr. Karenga, do you see the possibility of a convening again, as we had back in the past, whether it was Gary, Indiana, or some new formation that we begin to bring those various entities together?
Yeah, but first of all, we got to build locally. See, we got to build locally, we got to build statewide, then we build nationally. And we got to, I don't want us to have a big convention until we've done local work, because people go, and I love my people. You know, it's not like I think, but this is America and this is politics. If people get to a big program, they're going to, you know, just make speeches, and people going to get up and say, ain't nobody doing nothing. You know, the whole thing. I don't know why we're here. We got to stop talking. They came to talk, but they tell you, you know, I don't see why we talk. But look, let's face it. So all that's good, and I love my people, and that's good for them to do. But I'm saying that what we need to do is come to this big one with something concrete. We got to come. We have to think about it before we get there. We got to develop programs before we get there. And we got to share these programs, right? We got to talk about the best. This is what we try to do with every 5 years. We have these quinquennial celebration for the Nguzo Saba, and we try to bring people together to talk about where do we go from here. And we have small groups and panels, because if you have a big convention, even before the COVID-19, we would always have one plenary session, right, where the people come, but they also have a chance to talk on the side and to plan. And I just wish we could just do that. So we have different levels of meeting. We have the masses, we have the leaders, we have the organizers, we have the writers, we got different people for different aspects of the movement. Then finally we bring them all together. But they need to produce something we can discuss before we get there. That we need some documents, we need some statement that are worked out on the way to the convention. Okay. And that's drawing from the best of all the groups that are out there. The best ideas and practices.
All right. Our time is almost up. I've got one final question, and then I want to go to some quick announcements because you mentioned one of them, which was the census. But young lady in Terry in Harlem, and you've kind of touched on this. In fact, I'm sorry. Let me do this one real quick because it is our last question. What is your perception of this new wave of Black and Latino elected officials? How do you see them? Do you have any sense that they have born into a vision?
That are mixed? What are you talking about? You talking about Black Latinos or Black and Latinos?
Black and Latinos, sir.
Assuming office?
Yes.
And what about them?
My question is, how do you perceive them? What is your sense of them? Do you think that they are moving in a direction that is going to be of service and address some of these things that you talked about? There's
one of the things
in improving our lives.
Yeah, appreciate what you said, if I understand correctly. There are roles for Black elected officials, right? So we have to have, again, a vision of how we think they should serve us, right? That's what we have to do. And we cannot be so general. How do we think about all of them? We have to pick one. And we have to ask, does she or he do these certain things, right? So they have to go, first of all, to represent the interests of the people. But you have to know the interests of the people. What are the critical issues? Not say, oh, we name the thing. If in your place we need clean water, say that. If we need to save the planet or we need to stop climate change, you got to know that and argue that. You have to put that down and you have to go and confront them with that. And if they don't do that, you don't support them, right? That's what I'm saying. So it's not a question of what the Black and Latino politicians are doing. The question is, what are we asking from them? Then I can tell you if what they're doing is right. So we talk about Black elected officials and functions that they have. And just to talk about them, they have, I put down there, first of all, they're supposed to formulate and influence the formulation of policies which affect Black life. Secondly, they are instrumental in increasing the number and level of Black appointments in government positions. They also tend to influence white associate sensitivity to Black masses and demonstrate and win allies. Fourth, they have to provide a necessary link between government and Black people, right? And they also have to expose the dominant society. They have to criticize it from a position of legitimacy. But above all, they have to win space for us, win resources for us, win policies for us, and for the world we live in, right? We don't live in space. We live in this country called America, and we've got to improve it and us at the same time. In our organization, us, we say, we use the Egyptian concept of Saruj Ta, which means to heal, repair, renew, and remake ourselves in the process of repairing, renewing, and remaking the world. And that's what we have to do. We have to struggle to make the world we want and deserve to live in. We have to struggle to shape the politicians we want to serve us. They can't just come and tell us. We have to tell them. That's the problem. Sometimes we expect people to just do right because they're Black or because they said they're going to do right or because they do. No, people do right because they held it. First of all, they know what's right. Second, they accept what's right. And third, we constantly help them to do right. We stay with them and hold them accountable. That's what we have to do. I'm very optimistic, and I think there's a lot of positive people out there trying to do right, and we need to help them. We need to find them, but we first have to find ourselves, and we have to put together our vision of what we want, see who's into that, and support those processes.
Dr. Karenga, thank you so very much. As you said, you leave on a positive note, and we absolutely appreciate that. I want to just acknowledge our sister Terry, whose question I didn't get a chance to because our time has run out. But thank you for this continued work. I thought back to how long we have been interacting, and you talked about 55 years.
55 years.
55 years. And as you know, we are celebrating for the International African Arts Festival next year to be our 50th celebration. And so we're working those out because this virtual world is quite challenging. But, I thank you for that final piece. We remain optimistic also. We wish you well. Stay the course. And please give the greetings to the family and to all of the folks at us that we can continue. And we will see each other very soon in victory.
Thank you. We have to.
We appreciate
Together
it.
we will win. Pamoja tutashinda. Bila
Yes,
shaka, without a doubt. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Folks, let me give a few quick announcements before we close out. One, Dr. Karenga talked about the census. So listen, you got to be in it. There's no question about that. Stop the fear. Stop the fear, because what we're doing is cutting ourselves up, and we are, in fact, working against improving our lives in the present, and definitely for our children if we don't do that. This Sunday, October 11th, join the celebration of the 55th anniversary of the organization, US, at the Nguzo Saba Conference. Now, this is 3 to 6 p.m. on Pacific time, 6 to 9 on East Coast. You can go to Eventbrite and register there. Then Monday, November 2nd, the 50th anniversary of Black Solidarity Day. To get information on the virtual program, again, 718-398-1766. And then finally, be on the lookout because we will be doing a post-election report. Not sure whether it'll be the week of the 2nd or the week of the 9th, but just stay tuned because clearly it's going to require us to talk a bit about where do we go from here, no matter who wins. So on behalf of the International African Arts Festival and the New York chapter of NACO and the Black Solidarity Day Committee, I'm Adeyemi Mandela. We thank you, we thank you, we thank you, and please stay the course with us as we move towards this big celebration in July of next year for the 50th anniversary of the International African Arts Festival. Stay blessed. Peace.